Hello everyone and welcome to this video on corporate cultural diversity. This is quite an ambiguous title actually, so I do want to place it within the context of this week and the context of culture as an area of study in international business generally. So we've looked at culture in the Understanding Culture video. We've explored some of the definitions of culture and how culture can be expressed both in visible and non-visible forms. We've looked at ways of quantifying culture in the Quantifying Culture video, particularly Hofstede's dimensions of culture, and ways we can measure and compare different cultures. And what we're moving on to now is looking at how international businesses and multinational corporations generally are able or have to confront the fact that from a managerial standpoint, there's going to be significant cultural differences within their organization. So if you have a corporation which is, say, headquartered in the UK but operates within, say, Nigeria, Cambodia, Peru, and Pakistan, that's a lot of cultural distance there within the organization. So there has to be some kind of managerial approach to managing that kind of cultural diversity. I have to stress that this is distinct from managing cultural diversity from a HR standpoint. So you have various business cases for diversity and multicultural managerial approaches, but those are fundamentally to do with managing individuals and teams. We're going to look at this in this video from a broader perspective. We're looking at managing different parts of the company, managing different locations and therefore different culturally influenced parts of the organization itself. So it is slightly different from looking at the business case for cultural diversity. So if we take this fundamental question of how do international businesses deal with internal cultural diversity, so entire different divisions and parts of the organization are physically split across different national countries and therefore have significant internal cultural diversity, well, it is a challenging managerial issue unto itself. So if we take this as our center point, of, well, how do we deal with this existing cultural diversity? We have three significant approaches that companies can take, or they could take variations and mixes of them, but three broad approaches. We have the ethnocentric approach, the polycentric approach, and then lastly the geocentric approach as well. So we're just going to look at each of these three and look at what they actually entail. So if we start with the first, which is an ethnocentric approach, here the fact that our organization is spread out across multiple countries doesn't really change the fact that its identity, its cultural identity, is defined by the home country. So if our company was founded in the UK, is primarily a UK based business, but has internationalized and expanded into other countries, the corporate culture, the policies, the procedures, the rules are still very much based within the UK national culture. So an office may be opened up in Peru. However, the terms of work, the kind of organizational culture, the way people interact with each other is all imposed from the UK, and therefore is still very much a UK based culture. And the Peruvian employees will have to adapt to working for essentially a UK company that happens to be operating overseas. So the focus is very much on a home country culture. Now, this has the benefits of having a very clearly defined culture. It has the benefits of being able to be legible. Your actions and operation in one part of the company are very legible and understandable in a different part of the company, even if that's halfway across the world. So it has those benefits, but it does have the significant downsides of making your company very closely associated with your home country, which has various knock-on effects in terms of your international market and your international branding, but also requires a lot of adaptation by your local employees, which significantly risks losing your local knowledge and local understanding, or rather not losing that local knowledge or understanding, but the organization is set up in such a way to not prioritize local understanding and local knowledge of the market. So they are very major significant risks in this approach as well. If we move on to our second approach, which is a polycentric approach, here we can see this as almost the exact opposite of the ethnocentric approach. Instead of having a strong centralized core which imposes cultural norms on other locations, here we almost have a semi-autonomous group of companies. So our Peruvian branch in our example really is run according to Peru's culture, national culture. The norms of behavior and the understanding and any deep cultural elements are very much drawn from Peru's national culture. And the links to the headquarters in the UK are really through formal reporting mechanisms. So, financial reporting and major centralized decision making, but as much as possible, decision making and culture are very much spread out to the local branches. So it's difficult to talk about this as a strongly centralized company. It's rather a very distributed, decentralized approach. So here you really emphasize the benefits of local knowledge and local functioning, and you give a high degree of autonomy to each local branch, but you do suffer from not having quite the same level of control from the center. Lastly, our third approach is a geocentric approach. And in this approach, instead of this push-pull dynamic or tension between the home culture and the local culture, instead we have an attempt at creating a collaborative form instead. So here we really want a merging of cultures, so the local culture and the home culture really do attempt to come to an accommodation and understanding. So we have the formation of what appears to be almost a distinct hybrid cultural form within the organization. So in order to do this, we need to balance autonomy and centralization. So we want to balance the sharing of power and responsibility within the organization. If it's strongly centralized and power and responsibility rests with the home country, that's not going to allow us to create a hybrid culture. If we have too much autonomy in the local companies, then again, that's not going to allow us to have an equal share of power and responsibility. So we need to balance that as much as possible. And when it comes to management and senior management in particular, we're looking for merit-based promotion and selection. So we're not going to have a company where using kind of this geocentric approach, where all senior executives and board members are drawn from a particular culture. There has to be a balancing there as well. And we have a genuine sense of collaboration. So our Peruvian branch are not just solely focused on the Peru market. There has to be a sense of responsibility and focus outside of their own local market, and instead an understanding of the company as a whole. So this is a complex, difficult endeavor to do, but this would be the ideal form for a lot of companies such as Coca-Cola or Nike, which do not want to be seen in their cases as just an American company, where they're just imposing their own US-based culture on overseas branches, nor do they want to lose their strong centralization, strong global brand identity through allowing too much autonomy and freedom for their local branches. Instead, they want to try and combine the strengths of both and become a truly international company. The goal for Coca-Cola would be to be seen as a geocentric company, as a global company, rather than an American company that happens to have a branch overseas, or the opposite extreme, as a group of local companies that share the same name and some reporting requirements. So difficult to do in reality, but that would be one approach that would attempt to really carve out a separate space. As you can imagine, larger companies would have greater scope to try and implement a geocentric approach, simply because of the ability to have the management structures and the formal structures in place to achieve it.